Insane upgrade to Mercedes W14 for 2023. We're gonna be going through that and 3 other stories in today's video, so make sure to like this video. And if you want more Mercedes content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel hitting that red button down below. The first story is Toto Wolff reveals insane upgrades for 2023 Mercedes W14 car design. 2022 was truly a miserable season for Mercedes, as the Germans had to watch on as their 8-year reign of being constructors' champions came to an embarrassing end. The Silver Arrows have been the masters of the hybrid era since 2014 and have always remained on top even following slight regulation changes. However, the new aerodynamic regulations were seemingly a step too far for the Brackley-based team. What Mercedes attempted with the design philosophy of the W13 was truly staggering. It was arguably a piece of engineering genius. The paddock watched on as the Germans showed off their remarkable zero side pods, something that had many worried at the start of the year that they'd clear off into the distance once again. Anything but happened in 2022, as the side suffered from horrific porpoising for the first half of the season and quickly lost ground with both Ferrari and Red Bull. Mercedes lost half a season's worth of developments as a result of trying to solve the bouncing phenomena that was causing Lewis Hamilton and George Russell so many issues. Whilst they did overcome the issue, the German side left themselves with too much catching up to do, resulting in them claiming third in the Constructors' Championship. With the side having had so much catching up to do, Mercedes boss Toto Wolff was asked if the team were impacted by the budget cap. Wolff revealed that the side would have still finished third even if they had an unlimited budget, as it wouldn't have made a difference. "We're not lacking the capability, or we weren't lacking any of the tools, nor time," Wolff said on Phone's Beyond the Grid podcast. "It was more that we needed to peel off layer by layer in order to get to the ground of the problem, so it wouldn't have changed anything." Mercedes claimed just one victory and one pole position in 2022, both thanks to Russell. The leading side will be eager to return to the front next season and reclaim their constructors' crown from Red Bull, with Wolff revealing that Mercedes are changing the layout of the car for 2023. "We are changing some of the architecture and the layout of the car that should point us in the right direction," said Wolff. "But as it is with these new regulations, sometimes you uncover one problem, and then you realize there was another underneath. We have to stay humble and not feel a sense of entitlement that we're going to get back into this championship and win straight from the get-go. I'm really looking forward to it." The second story is the Mercedes F1 mindset that helped it bounce back in 2022. After a run of 8 successive Constructors' Championship titles since 2014, Mercedes found itself on the back foot with last season's new W13, which struggled with porpoising and a lack of performance. The opening phase of the year was especially difficult, as the squad lost weeks of development time trying to get to the bottom of what had gone wrong with its design. After several false starts, where it had appeared to unlock the answers before falling back again, Mercedes finally got on top of matters in the closing phase of the campaign to win the Brazilian Grand Prix. Chauvelin, who is Mercedes' trackside engineering director, says that while the turnaround was impressive, the season was far from fun at times. However, he reckons that a mindset instilled in it during the glory years was critical in allowing it to knuckle down when things went wrong. "It's difficult to look at the year and be very satisfied. It has been tough," he said. "But the culture in the team, I think, has helped us come through, and we never got carried away with our own success. We were quite quick to adapt to the reality that we were suddenly racing in the mid-grid, from having years where we go to every race with a chance of being on pole and winning it, and I think we dealt with that quite well." While Mercedes chiefs kept their chin up in public over the early struggles, Chauvelin confesses that there were difficult periods that had to be endured. "There were moments that were quite uncomfortable," he said. "The team and the owners have high expectations, and we knew that the early part of the year was nowhere near acceptable by our standards. But the team is now in good position to go into next year and challenge. The thing that we always said was we'd focus on the learning, not the winning. We were determined to try and make progress in that regard, and we did seem to get ourselves into a decent position." While dealing with the troubles was not a fun experience, Chauvelin does believe that the depth it had to go to understand what worked with the new ground effect cars could give it an edge going forward. "In reality, we spent 3 months where we did very little development, and it was all about learning and knowing what we needed to do," he said. "In the final races, we were bringing updates, and we've been running everything that we've been making, so I think it probably did help us. I think if we could choose between the two, we'd have always chosen for rolling out with a race winner and deal with it. But honestly, I think this year has been good for the team. We knew that you can't win everything forever, and we knew that a year like this was always going to be there. The test was always, well, When we get that year, how do we go? So I think it has been interesting. We've learned a lot. Whether we made the most of it will be determined next year. So the third story is a Mercedes F1 demand that Russell found unexpectedly tough. Moving from the back to the front of the Formula One grid is always going to prove to be a big step up for any driver, particularly when you're joining an F1 juggernaut that has won 8 of the last 9 Constructors' Championships and is a global automotive giant outside of it. That was the switch George Russell made when he left Williams after 3 years to partner Lewis Hamilton for what he thought would be his first year in title-challenging machinery in 2022. That obviously didn't transpire on track, but there were also key elements of his year off track that surprised Russell and extracted a toll that's left him wanting to do better in 2023. Russell says he wasn't prepared for the time he'd need to spend off track with Mercedes and its partners this year. Asked about the pressures of having his performances scrutinized between races now that he was in a front-running team, Russell said, "I wouldn't say necessarily pressures of the off-track stuff, but it's the time consumption of the things off track. For every 1 day of marketing, that's 1 day less in the gym, or training or resting and recovering to be in a better place for the next race. That's definitely taken its toll on me. I need to sort of understand and work out how I'm going to best deal with all of this because for sure, at times this year, I haven't dealt with it that well." Russell estimates he spent 60-plus days on off-track activities for Mercedes that didn't include any racing, simulator work, or days in the factory. That's 2 months' worth, Russell said, and that's away from the track. And these are flights, hotel nights, on my own. It's just part of being a Mercedes driver, but that's definitely a shock to the system. When you get 22 races and are 21 races in and it is compounded with poor performance, you feel quite low. But then to come back and have a bit of a reset and have the best weekend of the year by far, that was another reason why it was so hugely satisfying. Russell's busy schedule was at its most grueling at the end of that 22-race campaign, when he completed the Austin, Mexico City doubleheader, attended the Vegas Grand Prix launch event, returned to the UK for simulator work, and then flew out to the Brazilian Grand Prix where he'd earn his maiden F1 victory. Yeah, probably to be honest, Russell said when asked by the race if it was a more demanding spell than expected. "I knew it was going to be tough in that regard, and when I look at the calendar, that's a big part of it. At the end of the day I'm here, I'm a racing driver, and that's what I want to do. For sure, there's probably a better balance to be struck, but at the end of the day we can't go racing without our sponsors, and they're a big reason as to why the team has so much success. So as I said, you just need to find that right balance, and you learn with experience that you might not want to go before this certain race because this race has been more fatiguing than somewhere else. Having events, making sure they're as logistically as convenient as possible so they don't drain you as much because you know, those last 15 laps, the pressure, the intensity of the race, it was mentally and physically fatiguing. You're panting. I'd love to know my heart rate was, but I'm sure it was well over 180 for that last 20 minutes, just non-stop. It's like you're sprinting. So there's times like that you sort of wish you did a bit more in the gym and you were a bit fitter. But it doesn't matter how fit you are, it's always going to be tough.